Before we start this episode, we want to give a trigger warning to anyone that's listening. We will be discussing issues of abortion, themes of rape, incest, and all of that. So if you are comfortable listening, you can carry on. But if you need any support, please feel free to reach out to someone that you trust and know.
Hi, Hazelle!
And I'm Germaine.
And welcome back to another episode of Clevities Podcast.
As you can see, our dear Azura girl is in the screen today. Azura, tell us what is going on.
I am not in the country. I'm in Barcelona right now, but I'm committed to my work, so I'm here through your screen.
Yay!
We are holding this recording session at 8:30 a.m. her time.
Yeah.
Yeah, she woke up for this girl.
I'm surprised, yeah.
She is up. She has her makeup on. Her brows are there.
And
We
you
are
know,
so proud of you.
today we are bringing our listeners and audience, of course, back to this little studio where we started Harsh Podcast from.
This was season 1. It's such a cozy space. And we came in today like, how come we're here? Apparently, there's a good reason for that. We have a special announcement we want to make.
That's right. A lot of you have been like DMing us or like DMing Clarity, telling us how much you love Harsh Podcast. I even had someone tell me she listens to 5 Harsh Podcast episodes at one go.
What?
She waits for us to upload again and then she listens to 5 episodes at another go.
Oh, like she will binge listen.
Yes,
Okay.
like it's like a Harsh marathon, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I can't even listen to myself that much, but thank you so much. But today we want to announce that we're in season 4 right now, but it's actually going to be season
Forever!
What does that mean?
Yay! So what does that mean? Okay, so
Yay!
So we may be going on occasional breaks, nothing too long. So for example, Zura is in Barcelona right now, right? So we are going to be taking like a 1 week break after this.
Yeah.
But essentially we want Harsh Podcast to keep going on because there's so many topics and conversations that we can be having every single day, right? So we don't want to stop that. We want to keep interacting with you.
Exactly. So as much as possible, we will have new episodes coming out every week. And, hopefully we can share more with you about, the current affairs that are going on. And I think that brings us to what we're talking about today.
I think it's a bit serious, it's a bit sensitive, but it definitely should be talked about.
It's very important. You might have seen in the news over the last month or so, it's been headline news day after day. In the US, there was a huge, constitutional kind of issue where Roe v. Wade, this landmark case from 1969, was actually overturned. And what that means is that a woman's right to abortion and the legalization of abortion is about to change in the USA.
Okay, can we first share a bit more on how this law actually came about in the first place?
Okay, so Roe v. Wade, it was a landmark case back in 1969, right? So her name is Jane Roe, that's why Roe v. Wade, but her actual name is Norma McCorvey. She became pregnant with her 3rd child in Texas, and at that time, abortion was illegal unless it's to save the mother's life.
Okay.
Now, Jane was not in any of this situation, right? She wanted to get an abortion, but her attorneys filed a lawsuit against her local district attorney, Henry Wade, that's why Wade, alleging that Texas abortion laws were unconstitutional. Surprisingly, the courts ruled in her favor and allowed her to actually get an abortion, and that kind of set a precedence for so many women after.
So now this law is overturned, and Zura, what do you think about this?
I think when I saw it in the news, it's a very touchy topic. It's very sensitive. And I felt like, as much as we want to be pro-life, nobody here is trying to encourage abortion for no reason or anything like that. But I think that just like social egg freezing, that we talked about this, we want options and we want to be able to decide for ourselves because I think everybody's situation, circumstances, it varies, it really varies. And bring a life into the world, it's really not as simple as just giving birth. I think there's a lot that comes with it. And, when someone makes a decision to, have an abortion, for example, with a very good reason, I think that is responsible on their part because if you're going to bring the child into the world and, you don't have the means for it, you're not ready for it, you're not emotionally, mentally, physically ready for it, or you don't have the capacity for it, I think in turn, it could actually be worse for the child. Like the child is the one who's going to suffer.
Yeah, I completely, see where you're coming from. And I think when this whole thing came about, right, a lot of people were saying, oh, this is, such a step back for human rights and women's rights as well. And I came across this tweet that says, when the penalty for aborting after rape is more severe than the penalty for rape, that's when you know it's a war on women.
Right.
Yeah. But I think it's important to also, set the stage, right? What is illegal, what is not, what's considered an abortion. So here is how certain states, such as Texas, right, define abortion.
Okay.
So what doesn't constitute an abortion? Number one, saving the life or preserving the health of an unborn child. Okay, that's number one. Number two, removing a dead unborn child whose death was caused by spontaneous abortion. Or number three, removing an ectopic pregnancy. Ectopic pregnancy is a pregnancy outside of the uterus
Right.
where it gets stuck in the fallopian tube and it's not going to be able to come to full term.
Mm.
So these are not considered abortions and you can still get them in states like Texas. An
Okay.
abortion is where, for example, in cases of rape, where the child, there's nothing wrong with the child, right? But you just want to get an abortion. Yeah.
And we mentioned that these laws, they are constitutional, right? Which means it depends on how the states want to deal with this ruling, am I right?
Yes.
So it's made illegal in some, and it still can be processed or like proceeded with in others, am I right?
Yeah, so for example, let's say I live in California.
Okay.
I can still get abortions legally. But if I live in a more conservative state like Texas or South Dakota, that's where it's been made illegal.
Okay, so if a woman in Texas wants to get an abortion, can she travel somewhere else to get it done?
Yes, she
That's
can
all right,
actually.
right?
I've actually also read about some companies like Apple, for example, paying for their employees to go out of state, to travel out of state to get abortions. So
Really?
there are steps being taken by corporations as well to protect their employees.
Right, but I feel like having overturned this law, it actually makes a huge impact to women's life. Like Azura mentioned just now, we talked about egg freezing, we talked about options, and now I feel like we are taking one step back from what we have built up since 1969, as you mentioned just now.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the possible implications, Zura?
Yeah, so I think it's not just a now problem, it's not like oh, do I want an abortion now? Do I not want an abortion now? And then the problem goes away. I think it's a societal issue. It's a long-term issue where, if, for example, in states where it's going to be made illegal and you have, an uprise of these kids who are not taken care of, for example, in future, they may contribute to societal problems or issues. And it's like a never-ending thing. It becomes a vicious cycle, and it's not their fault. That's the thing, you see?
Yeah, definitely. I think by banning abortions, it doesn't actually mean that people won't get them anymore. Not everyone can afford to travel out of state to
Right.
get an abortion. What that means is you're making abortions very unsafe. People are going to try and get them done illegally, and a lot of people might lose their lives over procedures like that.
Right. So on the other hand, let us take a step back and try to understand why this rule is overturned. So I understand that, maybe the US government they think that abortion is equivalent to crime, is equivalent to
Murder.
murdering an unborn baby. So that is why they want people to be responsible for their own actions.
Yeah.
I get that. But what about accidents like we mentioned just now? If you are in a happy relationship, for example, and you got pregnant by accident, but you don't think you're ready to have this baby, you no longer have that option of letting it go. And rape, I can't stress about this enough. Like, what if it's not even up to you?
Well, if we want to understand, the pro-lifers, right? I can read you. This is a pro-lifer, and this is what she said. I'm against the legal option to destroy someone's body and violently end their life. So basically, abortion. I'm against abortion. If you are in support of that, you are the one that wants to control other people's bodies, not me.
Okay. I don't know, just very quickly, which side do you think you girls are on, Zura? Pro-life or pro-choice?
It's a tough question, and I think it's a little bit hard as well to choose an answer because, as we said, from the very beginning when we set stage, that it's very case by case basis. I understand to a certain extent as well, where they're coming from, because legalizing it, for example, it may give the idea or it may raise people with sort of the understanding that I can always take that out, let's say, okay, where it's not an urgent situation or an important situation. It feels like they can get it done whenever they want to just because they don't want a kid. And maybe that's not what they want, that's what they're trying to avoid. Because at the end of the day, passing a law, if someone wants to get an abortion, let's say it's legal now, there's no such thing as, oh, why are you getting it? Oh, for this reason you can, for this reason you cannot. Okay, you reconsider or anything like that, But I feel like, like what we said earlier, when it comes to rape, for example, you can't expect them to raise that child when they're not ready, when they're too young. Or if that child reminds them or is traumatic for them for the rest of their life, how is that going to affect the mother and the child at the same time? You know what I mean? The child might grow up completely unloved, or might receive abusive treatment from their mother just because she was suffering that trauma. And I think it's very difficult when it comes to things like that. But also, because you mentioned earlier, what if a couple is not ready? And I remember hearing a story from a friend, right? He actually said to me, like, their marriage is not good. He felt like it was never supposed to happen. And actually, he was about to file for a divorce. And then she got pregnant. So because of that, they stayed in that marriage. And I mean, they're divorced now, like, eventually. But you see,
Hmm. Let me throw a spanner in the works, right? Okay, for me, I'm 100% pro-choice, and I can say that here. But coming from a pro-lifer perspective, what they feel is that if you have an unwanted pregnancy, instead of aborting it, you should just give birth to it and leave it up for adoption.
But how can you guarantee that that kid is going to have love, all the kind of emotional
mm,
attention, financial attention that he or she needs?
Yeah.
I am not up for that.
I think we're talking about the American child welfare system. In America, on any given day, like even right now, there's at least 500,000 children in the foster care system. Because the adoption process is so difficult and is so complicated, a lot of children end up in foster homes where they're not properly loved. They get shoved around from one home to another, and they don't have that kind of welfare growing up. And that's also another consideration. Like you leave it up for adoption, but what's going to happen to that child?
Right.
and that's the thing, like what we mentioned earlier just now, right? That making it illegal, or making a decision like that, it's gonna cause more societal problems actually.
Mm. And I've been to a foster home in Korea. I can't say that the kids there are unhappy, but definitely I do feel that they can be getting more attention. Can you imagine this situation? There are 20 kids and only 2 adults to look after 20 kids. So I feel like if you feel it's responsible to just give birth to the kid and just leave it up to the adoption homes, then it's not being very responsible at the end of the day. So I would say that my option, I would lean towards pro choice as well. If you want to give birth to this child, you make sure you commit and you take care of him or her. And this is a huge commitment, right? Because pregnancy is 10 months, but the commitment is a lifetime. It's incredible. That kind of emotional stress, the kind of financial
Financial
pressure
stress. Yeah.
that you have to commit to is huge.
Yeah. Let's bring it back home, right? Let's talk about the stigma that surrounds prenatal marriage as well as abortion in Singapore, right? Why do you think some women might choose to terminate their pregnancies?
Oh, I've had a friend, just because she had too many kids. She only wanted to have 3. So for Singapore, I think actually 3 kids is also, more than average already. But she was very blessed with a 4th kid. But after discussing this with her husband, they felt like, financially, the cost of living in Singapore is also so high. They don't think that they are able to give all 4 kids a good quality of life if they choose to go ahead with it. So they decided that, okay, maybe let's not go ahead with the 4th kid so that we can give our remaining 3 kids a better life.
Yeah, I understand. Zura, what do you think? Why would some women choose to terminate their pregnancies?
I think for a multitude of reasons, right? But that's the thing, you see, when you make a choice like that, or when you're deciding on something like that, you definitely have your reasons, like Hazel's friend, for example. And I think that's already being responsible. I think in Singapore as well, especially when we have like different religions, and different religions have different stands on this. But I think in general, everybody believes that, a child's a blessing, it's a good thing, that it will bring you more joy than pain, for example, right? But I think we also need to be responsible in the sense that, can you care for this child for the next, not just 18 years of their life, but for the rest of their life? There are people who make decisions to abort, for example, because they find out early in their pregnancy that, let's say, the child is, maybe not fully formed, or the child is going to have some health problems. I don't think it's cruel, because I think at the end of the day, are they strong enough to be able to raise that child and to go through that life? I think people have a lot of opinion on this, but at the end of the day, isn't the parent the one who is going to have to do it for the rest of their lives?
Mm-hmm. And some people may say, oh, that's a selfish reason, to want to abort for
Mm,
your own reasons. But it is your body, right? It's your body, your choice. And I
mm,
agree that it can be completely selfish. I have a friend who she got an abortion at, I think it was 16 years old.
Okay.
At that
mm,
time, I was very shocked when she came to me and she told me that I'm going to get an abortion. And she had been dating this guy for maybe like a few months, right? And obviously, like, didn't use protection. That's a whole other thing, sex education, whole other thing. But the fact that her boyfriend at the time had to come to me and borrow money for the abortion, I actually paid for her abortion at the time. If he can't even afford the abortion, how are you going to afford to raise this child, right? It just doesn't make sense. And imagine if she had kept that child because of a law, because of a constitutional thing. Her life would be so different right now. You know, she wouldn't have been able to do all the things she wanted to do. Yeah.
And I have to disagree with Azura. Just now she mentioned that a child brings more joy than sorrow. I think it's really a case-by-case basis. For couples who are well prepared and have been looking forward to a child, of course, it's a bundle of joy and blessing. But for couples, for example, Jeremy's friends, I honestly do not think that this child would bring more joy.
Oh, they broke up shortly after the whole,
There we
the
go.
whole
And
situation.
this would have caused the child himself or herself a lot of trauma as well. Growing up in a broken family. And we also talked a lot about single parenthood. It's so tough to have just one parent. That's why you always need both hands in it, right?
I think single parent, I think that's completely fine. I think that,
It is.
if you commit to that, that's not an issue
Correct.
at all.
It's a lot of stress on you, so kudos to you. But if you just have to make sure you know that there's huge commitment.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Zura, when do you think, what's the ethicality of whether you decide to go ahead with an abortion or not? What's ethical, what's not ethical?
Wow, that's really, really hard. I think that's the thing, you see, when you pass a law like this, it's either this or that. It's very hard to come to an in-between where, you have to meet certain conditions. Because even if you put that in place, it's not your choice anymore fully. You know what I mean? It's putting conditions in place. It's not giving someone the rights or the complete option to it anymore. So I think it's really, really hard. But I think to sort of shape the society or help the situation in a sense that you don't want to promote that, you can just get it for fun or for no reason or, for no actual good reason. I think it starts elsewhere.
I think, to me, it's not about the ethicality. People can say, oh, it will be ethical or it's okay to get an abortion if you got raped or if it was incestuous, something like that. But to me, it's not about that. If you deem that it's only acceptable to get abortions in that sense, then you are reinforcing the idea that for a woman to have rights over her own body, someone has to violate it first. And that's not true. Like, even if it's not rape or incest, you should still have that right over your own body. And I love how, a lot of men, especially in the United States, are getting involved in this argument and saying that, oh, you can't do that with your body. But here's my take on it. If a woman is not allowed to have an abortion, then guess what? Men shouldn't be allowed to walk away from unwanted pregnancies, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
It takes two hands to
You're
clap.
locked in for life then, if you want to say it that way.
That's very true. Okay, so girls, bringing this to a local context, although highly unlikely, what do you think that if one day Singapore decides that abortion is no longer legal?
Wow, it would make it very, very unsafe. I think a lot of people would, then either do it illegally or have to travel and not be protected by the Singapore healthcare system. I mean, I'm very thankful that we live in a country that we recognize women's rights.
Yeah, and if Germaine's friend, right, for example, couldn't couldn't even afford an abortion at that age, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if it was illegal, I mean, how are they going to afford to travel, for example, or get it done safely? I mean, as it is, right? Even today, we hear like horror stories once in a while. Honestly, we really do. So imagine like the steps or, desperation pushes people to do crazy things. And imagine what they would be doing.
Well, I feel that Singaporeans, we live in like this environment, and my personal take is we make very informed decisions. So even if this was illegal in Singapore, I really do believe that many people would just travel out of this place to get it done anyway. But you have a point. Just now we mentioned not everybody has the financial means to go about doing this. So I really hope that day doesn't come.
Yeah. Even though abortion is legal in Singapore, there are, certain procedures that you have to go through. It's a process, right? And there are certain caveats. You can only abort up to 16 weeks. Anything later than that, right? Over 24 weeks is prohibited. It's considered a late-term abortion. And that can actually put both mother and child at risk unless the mother's health is, dependent on this abortion.
Right.
Then that's okay. There's a whole process. You have to go through counseling. There's a waiting period. There's records that Ministry of Health have to keep. So it's not just like on a whim, oh, let's get an abortion and we go get an abortion. No, you have to go through a process.
Right. So other requirements, for example, you must be a citizen of Singapore or wife of a Singapore citizen, or you must be a person who has been a resident in Singapore for at least 4 months. So you can't just like waddle in and decide, oh, hey, I want to get an abortion done. Like, no, there's a lot of procedures ahead of you.
Yeah. So I think, there are a lot of stories like that in Singapore, and our producers wanted to highlight a few of some real life cases that have happened here as well. One of these stories is, we'll give her a pseudonym. Her name is Sophie.
Okay.
She was actually 19 years old last year when she found out that she was pregnant, right? And her parents told her, either you get an abortion or you have to get married.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. She decided to get married to her boyfriend then of 5. He was 5 years older than her, but they had a huge fight before the day of the wedding, and they actually called the wedding off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wait, so the girl is 19, the guy is 24.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Still very
exactly.
young, still very young.
And after this relationship ended, her parents still wanted her to get an abortion, but Sophie couldn't do it. And her parents actually kicked her out when she was 3 months pregnant because she refused to get an abortion. And her reason for not aborting the baby is that abortion might have been the easiest thing to do, but it didn't feel right, and I didn't feel like the baby deserved to die. And eventually she sought help from a shelter, and her parents accepted her back into the family.
Actually, right. I also know someone who got pregnant when she was 18, and she was in JC at that time. She decided to keep the child. They decided to get married, keep the child. But they also, they were very lucky. They had both parents' support, both family support, and they're still married till today. The kid is like 16, 18 today. And they've had like a couple of other child after, but like after a long time, and that worked out for them. That's why I say it's not just a to keep or not to keep issue. Like it's not just an abortion or no abortion issue, but I think there's a lot of other things that comes with it. Like in this case, let's say she's really prepared mentally, physically, financially, but she also needs family support, because it really takes a village.
Right, and I feel like coming from her parents' point of view, I could totally see why they wanted her to get an abortion because she was not ready. That guy sure as hell was not ready. But you know what's the best thing in this situation? Sophie actually had a choice. So she could go ahead with her parents' decision to abort it, or she could go ahead with her own decision to keep it. And she's blessed because things are working out for her. She's back together with her parents. They're supportive. They're bringing out the child together. And I hope they have a very healthy and happy relationship now.
Yeah, but the important part is she had that choice.
Exactly.
And she made that choice. Therefore, she can live with herself, knowing that she made that decision to keep the child.
Right. So here's another story. This author from this online platform, she shared that she had used protection while having sex, but unfortunately the condom broke and eventually she found out that she was pregnant. So she and her partner decided to go ahead with an abortion because they thought they were not ready for a kid. And at the end, the author actually mentioned that she was mentally strong and prepared enough to go through the entire abortion procedure, unlike a lot of other girls who may have some regrets in their hearts.
I think a lot of people think that abortion is just such an easy process. Like if you make it legal, it's so easy to go through. But there are a lot of considerations. There's a lot of mental stress and trauma on the people that have gotten abortions as well. It's not just that simple. It's not black and white. So giving them that choice, they've made that choice. All you can do is to be there and support them.
Right. So can I just tell you a story of a very, very close friend of mine? She and her boyfriend have dated since the age of like 14. So it's 11 years down the road now. And one day, it was during the circuit breaker period, she found out that she was pregnant. So she and the boyfriend went back home to tell her parents. Her parents were not very supportive of this. They wanted her to let go of it because, you just graduated from uni. What do you mean? You have no money to take care of the kid. And are you sure you want to be married to this guy? Sure, you dated for 11, 12 years, but are you sure? You better give yourself some more time to think this through. They signed up for this abortion procedure. But the day before they visited the clinic, they actually decided to come to the guy's family to tell the guy's parents about it. And the guy's parents, they were very supportive of them keeping the baby. The mom of the father actually said, don't abort the baby. Just give birth to her. We will take care of her. So the day before the abortion, my friend cried. She broke down in tears and she decided, you know what, I don't want to go through the abortion anymore. Because after they have the scan thing and you can actually see the fetus. And upon seeing that, it really broke her a bit. To sort of like let go of this life. So eventually they kept it. The baby is about a year old now. She's so, so adorable and I'm so happy for her that they are doing this. But once again, they had an option too. So now they've
Mm.
decided to keep this baby with no regrets in their hearts because they know they could have gone the other path, but they didn't. They choose to keep it.
Okay, so I have a friend as well who so she found out that she was pregnant, right? And she had been dating this guy maybe like 2 years or so. But she didn't want to tell her family because she was afraid that her family would influence her decision. And she wanted it to be her own decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
So when she found out she was pregnant, I think what she felt was that shit, like, I'm with this guy right now, but this is not the guy that I want to be with for the rest of my life. How can I keep this baby knowing that I don't want to raise a baby with this guy? So it kind of went through her head in that sense. So she kept it, from both the families. They kept it from both the families, went ahead for the procedure, and basically didn't tell anyone about
Okay,
it.
wait. Can the guy pay for the abortion procedure?
No.
Oh,
So the girl paid for it.
oh.
So the girl paid for it. My friend paid for it.
Okay.
Shortly after the abortion, they broke up, and then her parents found out a few years later, and her mom was like so upset. Her mom was saying, "Why didn't you tell me about this?"
Because you would have influenced her decision.
Yeah, precisely. Because, you're afraid of like your parents being disappointed in you, being upset in you, and not being able to support you. And I guess she was just scared at the point of time. But it made her realize that this is not the person that she wants to be with.
Right.
Yeah, imagine if she had kept that child in. And that guy went on to be a deadbeat dad. He knocked up another girl and didn't want to take responsibility for that child. She wanted to keep it.
So did she keep it in the end?
Yes.
Oh.
So imagine, can you imagine? Like, that's just crazy. So the most important thing is, to have a choice.
Right.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like what we've been talking about from just now, it's really about the importance of having a choice, right? And if you want to make it illegal for an abortion, then don't allow all these bloody guys to have sex lah. You don't have sex lah. Hmm? You're not gonna take responsibility. I have to, take responsibility for it. I'm the one who's gonna be stuck with a child because I'm birthing it. You can jolly well run away and be a DVD. You don't have sex lah, simple.
She's like rapping. She's very angry.
There was a tempo to that.
Yeah. There was a
Whatever
beat.
she just said.
Let a beat drop. Yeah, but I also read something that I think is very poignant. So in the US, right, where this whole thing originated, where they're, banning abortion in many, many states, buying a gun is actually easier than getting an abortion. And someone said, "You wouldn't try to regulate my vagina if it fired bullets." So therefore, right, we should train our vaginas, right, to shoot bullets.
Wow.
Yeah, not bad, right?
I need to train harder.
Harder.
I need to train harder.
Like an AK-47.
No, that's a very valid point.
Yeah.
Why is it easier
To buy a gun?
to get a gun than to get an abortion?
Yep.
Oh, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
but this is personal point of view, okay? So, yeah, we are all entitled to our own opinions, right? That's what Hush Podcast is for.
Exactly. And let's talk about, some advice or some thoughts for our listeners. Of course, it's not happening right here in Singapore, but how can we support what's going on?
Oh, I know secondhand how traumatic it must be to be going through the decision of like, should I go for an abortion or not? Because that friend that I mentioned just now, she was very close to me.
Yep.
So I can see her breaking down. So I just want to say, please remember that this is your choice. And like what Germaine mentioned, maybe your family members can influence your choice. So it's definitely up to you whether you want to let them know or not. But speak to someone you really trust, be it your gynae or whoever, and make the most informed decision that you can.
Absolutely. Zura, what do you think?
I think, nothing is for certain. You could jolly well sign up for an abortion. Actually, I know somebody whose mother wanted to abort him. She was on the way to the clinic already, and then she decided to turn back. So, nothing is for certain, but having that choice, I think, says a lot. It helps a lot because, it lets you explore things. It lets you think about the kind of life you want to have, the kind of life that you want your child to have. And I think that in itself is very, very important because, it influences, it affects a lot of other things in this world. So that's what I think that, an abortion is not an easy thing to go through. It's not something that you can just decide like, oh, I'm going to buy candy today. Oh, I'm going to have an abortion today. It's not anything like that. It's actually a physical thing. It's actually a mental thing as well for the mother who is about to do it. But having a choice is the most important thing because I think it's her body and she knows what is best for her and the child. Like, I think a lot of this has to do with the child as well.
Yeah.
The quality of life that the child's going to have. That at the end of the day, right, the child's not going to suffer.
Being pro-choice is not being pro-abortion.
That's right.
I think that's
right.
a very important distinction. Being pro-choice is allowing them to make their choices. And if, let's say, your friend comes to you and she says, "I want to do this," don't try to tell her that's the wrong decision or anything. Just be there for her, support her. If you can, if you guys are close enough, maybe accompany her to the clinic. You never know what's going on in her life, and just check in with her after as well, regardless of whether she chooses to keep the child or abort the child. Just be there for them.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to say that whatever you're feeling, if you're going through the decision of like abortion or not, whatever you're feeling, they're all valid, okay? So don't invalidate yourself and your emotions. That's very important.
Absolutely. And I think if you want to support like what's going on in the US as well, you can donate to an abortion fund. If that's something that you want to do and you're comfortable doing, yeah, why not?
That's right. Once again, this is our, personal opinion. We're not trained professionals. We are by no means like experts or qualified to talk about this. But I think that this opens up a channel for conversation, which is really, really important. And I hope that you know that you're never alone, no matter what you're going through. Just think about it for yourself. I think that's important for your future and for your child's future. Because whoever's going to say anything, right, if they're not going to help you in raising that kid, then not valid.
Well, this is a touchy, sensitive topic, but I'm glad we talked about this. And for you who have been listening to us over the past, say, 30 minutes, thank you for being here with us.
We're always here for you, and let us know if you guys have any thoughts about this as well. We are open to hearing all kinds of thoughts as well.
Please listen to us on YouTube, Me Listen, Apple Podcasts, and as well as on Spotify.
Once again, I'm Hazel.
I'm Germaine.
I'm Azura!
And we'll catch you on the next episode of Clarity's Hash Podcast.
Season forever!
Season forever. I hope the next episode we will all be together.
Woo!
Yeah. Enjoy your trip in Barcelona, baby girl. We miss you so much.
Thank you, my love.
Bye-bye. Welcome back to another episode of Clarity's Hash Podcast.
As you can see, our dear Azura girl is in the screen today. Zura, tell us what is going on.
Sorry, I also want to do.
A 5 seconds delay. That's what's going on.